It really is stunning, and it's something that we have to come back, and we have to have a strong defense, but it should be a strong defense of the United States and the people and the property in the United States. Now, one other thing is very important, and that is a part of this, is we need to be dedicated as a nation to free trade. Free trade is very, very important. And to that end, we should certainly enter as many free trade agreements as we can. But we ought to go beyond that. We should unilaterally drop our trade barriers in the United States. That is, to unilaterally drop them, to set an example for the rest of the world. This whole paradigm of it's us versus them, it's us versus them, no, that's the wrong way to look at it. It's that people overseas want to voluntarily sell to people in the United States who want to voluntarily buy those products that they are making. Goods, services. It's a voluntary exchange from an organization or individuals in one part of the world with another organization or individuals here. They should be free to do that. It's not a matter of the United States versus the foreigners. That's absolutely the wrong way to look at it. And we need to set an example for the rest of the world, drop our trade barriers, and draw other nations of the world into a great capitalist peace. That is the way the war on terror is going to be won in the long run. Textiles are very important to the economy of Pakistan. Well, what does it say to the people of Pakistan, which is potentially a very dangerous nation? They have nuclear arms, they have Islamic revolutionaries occupying part of that nation. What does it say to the people of Pakistan if we have trade barriers and don't want to deal or don't want to trade with them or make it harder for them to trade with the United States? We want to draw all peoples of the world into free trade. Why is it? Why do you think it's impossible to think of a war in Europe? You know, they went World War I, World War II today. Are we worried about a European war? No. Why? It's bad for business. It's bad for business, and that's a darn good thing. So free trade is very important as an instrument of foreign policy, and it also is going to improve the welfare of consumers here in the United States. Also, in case you hardly hear about it anymore, Iraq. Oh yeah, we're still there. We need to get our troops out of Iraq. In fact, we need to bring our troops home from around the world. The only possible justification for international U.S. military involvement right now is in fighting al-Qaeda. I do think al-Qaeda is an enemy of the United States, and it remains a danger, but we should not be involved in any other nation, and we should not be involved in nation building in Afghanistan. We need to keep our eye on fighting enemies who are real threats to the United States and the people and the property in the United States. And the Bush administration obviously has not hewed to that. They've gone far beyond that. We need a smaller, it will be more efficient economically, and will all be a lot safer in the long run. The other big issue, I guess this is the issue why I think 2008 is so important, is the coming entitlement spending explosion. This is just such, let's put this in perspective right now, this bailout bill. And please, if I don't get to that, somebody remind me to go back to the bailout bill. But the real problem right now is the toughest problem we face, I think, is Medicare. That is really the toughest problem right now. This bailout bill, they're calling it $700 billion, so that's $0.7 trillion. Right now, the amount of money that the federal government would have to put in the bank to draw interest to pay off the future deficits, the future projected deficits of Medicare is $75 trillion. That is 107 times the amount of money supposedly going to be spent on the bailout. It is 5 times the current annual gross domestic product of the United States. I tell people, I say, there's something that you can take to, hopefully, a sound bank. And that is that the U.S. government is going to welch on its promises to the American people on Social Security and Medicare. It will do so not because it wants to do so, but it will have to do so. There is no way this nation can scrape together $75 trillion without firing up the printing presses and causing an unbelievably bad inflation. There's no way that can be financed, and we need to step up and start dealing right now with the problem of Medicare and the problem of Social Security. Now, I think Social Security actually is easier to handle. It's not as bad a situation financially as Medicare. But with respect to Social Security, I support the Cato Institute's 6.2% solution for Social Security. This would allow current workers, if they wanted to stay in the Social Security system, they could. But it would give them the option to opt out of the Social Security system and waive their future benefits in exchange for being able to put 6.2%, their 6.2% payroll tax in a personal account. And to put that into investments, these investments would be selected by the government ahead of time. It would give people an option to save on their own for their retirement. The 6.2% payroll tax to be paid by the employer, that's currently paid by the employer, would continue to go into the Social Security system and fund transition costs, that is, payments to current retirees, and also disability and survivors benefits. A plan like this has been evaluated by the Congressional Budget Office, and it says that this would return Social Security to long-run fiscal stability, because currently it's going to start having expenditures in excess of revenues by 2017. That's only 9 years away. Social Security is going to be running in the red. But the CBO says that it would return Social Security to sound financial footing, and also people would earn higher returns with their investments in private accounts over the long run. And even though the stock market, I know it's been bad recently, but there is no 20-year period going back to 1925. We're talking 1946 to 1945, 1927 to 1946, et cetera, et cetera. Every 20-year period that you can carve out subsequent to 1925, there has never been a negative stock market return. Never. And what really upsets me, frankly, is that I hear the Democrats in particular have just completely perverted the language, I think. They talk about government spending. When they talk about government spending, it's an investment. Have you noticed that? We got to invest in healthcare. We got to invest in this. We got to invest. They're talking about government spending. But then when they actually talk about investing, they say that it's a gamble. When the private sector invests, it's a gamble, but when the government sector spends, it's an investment. And this is complete hogwash, and it is just a complete perversion of the language, in my opinion. But the Social Security situation is a lot easier to solve than Medicare. William Niskanen, who was, until very recently, the chairman of the Cato Institute, called Medicare the greatest threat to individual liberty, in his opinion, that exists today, simply because the potential tax rates to finance the Medicare that has been promised to an aging population, if they live up to those benefits, there will be confiscatory payroll tax rates that American workers are going to have to pay. And at the end of the day, the real problem is in our aging population. We are headed toward a situation where we will have one retiree for every 2 workers. And that's a situation that absolutely cannot be sustained with large transfer payments, intergenerational transfer payments. We have got to step up and do something about Medicare. What do? Well, first of all, prepaid Medicare accounts, allowing people to, again, take their payroll tax, and instead of paying it to the federal government, to allow them to save it in a tax-deferred account toward their retirement to finance their own health care. With both Social Security and Medicare, we have to get away from the pay-as-you-go system, where current workers are funding current retirees. The demographics are simply working against it, and frankly, it's arguably immoral, frankly. I think that people ought to be responsible and save for their own retirement, and it's very important that we convert to that sort of system.